I first heard about EHS at the Leaders Summit. Pastor Kev showed the AV of Pete and Jerry Scazzero back in February, and I picked up on it immediately that it was something that I had to get hold of and know more about. So I went and logged on to emotionallyhealthy.org and I bought the book. I knew that I needed it. I knew that it was something, whatever was in this book, what he was talking about in his initial testimony, when he talks about feelings, and Jerry was talking about why is there constant chaos in my life. I guess I was at that point that he describes as the journey through the wall. I was definitely at a wall in probably every area of my life. I was just like, okay, I feel like I'm not making any progress anywhere anymore. What has to happen for me to move forward? It was definitely something that helped me. God was trying to bring to light areas and ways of relating that if he were to take me further, he needs me to be able to relate well, to love others well, to move forward in what he has for me. And I would just keep, for many years, I guess, I would be really just at that wall. And it was so great to have a name for, I'm like, oh, journey through the wall. There's a name for what I've been going through for the past few years. The first 4 pathways really took me on a major internal rewiring process. When I was journaling, I was describing it as a heart transplant, that God was just giving me a renewed heart. And particularly the first pathway, know yourself that you may know God, it really had such an effect in opening up the world of feelings and describing your feelings, and that's the area in personal honesty and vulnerability, just being real before God and allowing your true feelings to come out. In one of the sermons, it talked about rating yourself in how your upbringing has been, from not so great sort of upbringing to it was absolutely wonderful. And I was really on the low end emotionally. Like, I absolutely respect my parents. They provided for me. It was not entirely bad, but there was a lot of emotional absence, a lot of, in the ways you relate to people, I just didn't learn any of that. God took me through just an area of my upbringing. Just something that I'd learnt from my parents teaching me was that you don't talk unless asked. Children should be seen and not heard, and you need to even just be invited to be part of a conversation. I would keep myself at a distance, and I'd realised I'd done that. God showed me in that context, but I'd lived that way since my upbringing, because from my childhood it was quite a high sort of limit upbringing with lots of rules, and yeah, unless I was given the nod or given a go-ahead, it was difficult for me to participate in just a general conversation. God was just encouraging me to grow up and, yeah, and not act in the way that I was brought up in my family, but to really act in a way that is now part of God's family. The biggest impact for me after reading Emotionally Healthy Spirituality was that it's a book about personal honesty and openness and being vulnerable, and that in itself was just a very freeing thing for me to come to terms with and not have this thing where I have to hide anymore. And because the 2 greatest things that God calls us to do is to love Him with all of our hearts and then to love others well. And it was in the area of loving others well that EHS was revolutionary for me, because it just allows me to know how to have great relationships. EHS takes you on a journey of stripping off the false layers that you've built up to keep yourself from getting hurt And God says, no, you need to be open, you need to be vulnerable, and you need to be honest with Him and with others. And so that was really a great turning point in my walk with God, and in the area of personal honesty, that I was just able to be me, to be my true self.